welcome back. Week 2, new Earth Anchors, our brilliant solutionaries. I am Dr. Tatiana Irvin, and I am here with my soul sister in purpose, Shelley Whitehouse.
Hello.
Hey, are we ready for this today, Shelley?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This topic has so many roots to it. It is that epitome of the big, beautiful anchored live oak tree where the branches expand into heaven and the body and the trunk brings this deep, rich rootedness into the expansiveness into the earth. And it just kind of really holds a powerful anchor in bringing a lot of this earth anchor topic together. Don't you agree?
Oh, what a beautiful vision you just provided for that. Yeah. Yeah. So today we're going to be discussing empathy and boundaries and how those two are intertwined in our ability to anchor peace and be present for others.
And be present for ourselves, because as we discussed last week in False Separate Self, and we've had some feedback. We thank you, those of you that have signed up, those of you who have given us some feedback in the chat room. We're here for you. We heard you. Some of you really want to know about interpersonal relationships. But first we want to touch on what is it to have empathy, first and foremost, knowing that there is no separateness. There are filters, but there is no separateness. How do we use empathy? So let's talk about empathy first, and then let's talk about boundaries and why that's important. Empathy is what we immediately feel. Empathy is a conditioned emotional response, and it is a way for our intuition to flow by way of feeling, less by way of cognition, less by way of spiritual epiphany. It's more of that human condition of feeling. And so if we have less filters, or if we're working towards intuitive empathy, kind of a pre-cognizant emotional connection to others, we can pick up on the energy of the room. We can feel people's true intentions towards us when we walk into the room. We can walk onto a piece of land that is depressed and has not been properly utilized in terms of maintaining its natural structures or maintaining its land masses, its trees, it's overgrown, walking into an office that has a lot of agitated energy and feeling the empathy of all those that feel somewhat strangulated by the lack of energy flows and chi that are in the room. All of these things touch on empathy. And Shelley, I know that the minute you walk into your sweet spot of the barn and the land and the property, there is that empathy exchange. Talk a little bit about that, because this addresses all levels of sentience.
Yes, absolutely. And horses too, because we talked a little bit last time about their sensitivity, their ability to read energy. That's how they survive in the world, is they can read energy. They can feel intention. And I think of empathy as that ability to feel someone else, and people who are not aware of their empathic abilities often feel other people's energy and emotions, and they mistake it for their own.
Yes.
And so they start to think that they're depressed or something's wrong with them, or they have a stomach ache or something like that, and they're actually picking up from someone else. Horses will do the same thing. For my barn peeps who are listening to this, people who are often in a barn situation, you might notice one day you walk in and everything just feels like peaceful and whole, and you just feel this incredible sense of wellness, and the horses are happy and everybody's fine. And another day you'll walk in and you'll just feel this agitation and angst, and you don't know what's going on until someone comes around the corner and they're just ranting and raving about this, that, and the other. And you realize one person can throw the whole system off just with their frenetic, whatever it is they're complaining about, whether it's legitimate or not. But to them, it's legitimate.
Gosh. Yeah.
To them, it's legitimate.
They're trying to feed the horses while they're dealing with an insurance claim on the phone, and the two don't mix.
Sure. Something like that. Exactly. Good example.
Well, you know, those examples come to mind because sometimes they're real life examples. Sometimes we just realize how quickly an invasive external energy comes into the field that we're in, and the two of them cannot maintain resonance. So one will dominate the other. What I would love to do for the sake of our earth anchors, our evolving earth anchors, is let's start at the basic level of sentience, and we're going to work our way up to the human empathy and the boundaries. I'm excited to kind of touch on the ground level sentience and how we teach this as a practice in some of the retreats that Shelley and I do, Earth and Equus. If any of that excites you about becoming an earth anchor and understanding from literally the microbial life up, and we will go on site into the unseen intelligent energies that are simply part of the measurable universe, but that we don't see. But for the sake of teaching this as a foundational principle in a soundbite, we're just going to start with what we can see. We're going to start with the material world. Microbial life is waiting for us to not only claim land, not with ownership, but with stewardship.
Yes.
And coming onto it and saying, all right, I'm not alone here on this property. I am surrounded by divine intelligence that has its own charter. It has its own initiative for why it was created. And it wants to be in divine blueprint. It wants to be in harmony with its divine charter. And so we're meant to come out as stewards, and we're meant to talk to the microbial life as Rudolf Steiner did, as the understandings around biodynamics and so many others that have gone.
Emerson, yeah, many. Mm-hmm.
Right. A lot of the illuminated, a lot of the existentialists and just big thinkers. So the first thing we want to do is realize I can negotiate a relationship by creating empathy and thereby reciprocity with the microbial life. I may have a depletion of NPK. A lot of you people that are into, fertilizers that are not necessarily made by nature, but are made as chemical fertilizers. A lot of you know, if you don't have the right nitrogen, if you don't have the right potassium, if you don't have the right elements in the soil, you're not going to have healthy microbial life. So we can talk to the microbial life and say, all right, what's missing in my soil? Sure, go send it off to the exchange and have the agronomics people tell you what you're depleted in, but start with building a relationship of inquiry and reciprocity with the soil. Moving on up, you've got insects. Bring in the pollinators. Welcome the pollinators. How do you do that? Well, you can talk to them, obviously, but you need to plant the flowers. You need to set up the environment. You need to create a harmonious space. And we move up from that. Of course, there's the pests, and we can talk about the pests. And I actually do want to talk about it because next week is do no harm. But I want to make it really clear, it is biblical and it is philosophical in our human origins that not all creatures are here with a positive blueprint charter. Some are literally, quote unquote, and this could be up for debate, and we'll leave it all on the table, but we've heard again and again, some things are here to tempt and torment mankind. Some things are here just to give us a hard time. So we're going to stay open to the fact that even those relationships, there can be a degree of empathy or move into negotiation and creating boundary. So insects, pests that are on your property, aggressive species that are in your garden that are eating things you're trying to grow. All of those are still within the empathy and boundaries and negotiating relationships. And then we get into higher life forms. Things we're growing in our garden, we're growing on our property, the dogs in our house, the parakeet. And, it's really... The
rabbits and the bunnies and the deer and...
everything, yeah? And I know that you, again, because this is part of your day-to-day experience, you recognize that the horses are only going to be as happy. And our guests that join us in some of these upcoming retreats are going to realize that the land and the horses and some of the higher sentients are only as happy as the balance of the microbial life, the insect life, the pollinators, the birds that are coming in for the pollinators, right? We have a really sterile and undynamic environment if all of those aren't taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think about the, like when I walk onto the land, and the very first thing I do is experience gratitude because it's so powerful to just feel when you walk on there. I don't live on the farm, so when I travel there almost daily, and just driving in and appreciating the setting and the view and the trees and seeing the horses just happily grazing or or seeking shelter in the shade, where they have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty, so that it's not, and there's not so much that it's out of balance. It has to be cared for. Like you were saying, I mean, in order for it to provide the way it does, it has to be nurtured. You can't just keep taking and taking and taking, which is exactly what we've been doing to our poor planet.
Mm-hmm.
Is it has to be nurtured, and that's that reciprocity that you were mentioning. But something that I know people sometimes struggle with reciprocity is actually the receiving part.
Yeah.
Especially people listening to this and that may resonate with this are most likely chronic givers.
True.
And they're not practiced in receiving, or they feel guilty about receiving, or there's they're out of exchange with receiving.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity to notice that when you receive, you create more space for receiving, and you have more to give.
Mm-hmm. It literally is a science. It isn't just this pretty thought. Right. It isn't that mystical, actually. Those that understand and follow some of this evolving quantum physics models, this quantum science model, understand that you are creating a resonance in your field all the time. Mm-hmm. And if your resonant field is, hey, universe, I'm absolutely okay. Hey, general quantum field, my spiral within spirals, I'm good always being the giver. I'm allowed to tank all the time. I come last. It doesn't see that as good, bad, or otherwise. It says, okay, that's what you're choosing to co-create.
Your wish is my command.
Opportunity for that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want that for our students, for our community. We want you to realize that while it is noble to be self-sacrificing, while it is noble to be looking around and having empathy for others and wanting to step up to the plate and be that conscious being in the room that could make the difference in the moment, it can't be immediately to your detriment and to your constant deprivation.
This is a good time to now talk about boundaries.
Okay. So let's talk about boundaries with even pets real quick, because we've got so much to cover. I know those that have a very human relational relationship with a dog or a cat, for instance. Let's just say a dog. And you've gone through a hard time. Maybe you've gone through a breakup. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe you've just gone through a deep, deep, powerful loss, and your pet fills that blank. And your pet has become a family member, and that pet now is eating before you eat. That pet sleeps in your bed before you sleep. You give up your down pillow for that pet, and you just love that pet. That's the choice that you're making. Well, animals don't think the same way that we do. Animals think in pictures and charged emotions, but they have certain primal divine stair-step ladders of understanding as well. They don't have some of the higher cognitive functions. This has been studied. It doesn't put them down, but they are not human. What does it tell your pet, your pack animal, when they eat before you, when they get the pillow that you like, when you are willing to consistently put them first? It tells them that they're alpha, which is part of their hierarchy and their order. You've created empathy, reciprocity. Your animal loves you, you love them back, but you've also given a very wide boundary to an animal that can misinterpret because of its primal nature and its sense of divine charter, and then end up finding at times that you have compromised your ability to set healthy boundaries for yourself in intimate relationships going forward. Or maybe the partner you bring in isn't interested in sharing every one of their meals with your pet or sharing the bed with your pet. There are things that we need to take into consideration just with something as obvious as how we care for our animals. And I know you can bring a great example of how this plays in with horses if you give them too much latitude and not enough direction. Go there, Shelley. Tell some of our folks.
Well, listen, all of us crave structure, including our animals. And our animals need to know that you're the leader. Because if you're not, they're either going to become the leader or they're going to choose another leader. And if they don't have a choice, they just won't really feel safe with you. Mm-hmm. So this is a great, this is a great illustration of having empathy, feeling what your pet feels, feeling what your horse feels, knowing that they depend on you and taking that responsibility seriously. However, being able to hold your own space in a way that allows you to have them in your space without taking over your space, if that makes sense.
Because they only know that quantum message or that quantum expression that we are putting out into the universe that says, oh, anything for you. You can have the best of my food. You can have the most comfortable place on my couch. Anything for you. This isn't to condemn how anyone conditions themselves with their pets. The whole idea is, if you have the empathy and you want the reciprocity, then you need to know where the boundaries are to make sure that the energy flows back to you. And a lot of us are depleted, aren't we, Shelley? That's a lot of reason why we're here now, is that we realize we didn't set sufficient boundaries.
And most of us didn't even know, especially women, didn't even know that we had permission to have boundaries.
True.
That we didn't know we were allowed to say no, or that we could.
We haven't always been safely able to do so, as we know, as we've gone through this season of a patriarchal order that now is coming a little bit more into balance, as we're aware. And
correct,
a whole other topic, isn't it?
Yes.
I would love to share on the level of sentience that's lower sentience. And when I say lower, again, we're just talking about a hierarchy of cognition and developed prefrontal cortex. So I wouldn't consider chickens to have a highly evolved human style level of cognition and prefrontal cortex. And I had babysat some chickens to be in my garden recently. And it was just a short-term thing. I don't keep chickens on my property, but I wanted them to come. I wanted the experience of negotiating a relationship with them. I'm going to be quick about this because I want to get back to humans. But what was super fun in having them on my property, not having worked with them at this level before, and setting up comfortable conditions for them, and knowing that without a nesting box, because I'm not set up for any of that, I may not get any eggs. But my goal is, would you please come onto my property? I sent them those quantum psychic signals. I sent the pictures. I sent the emotional component of gratitude and welcoming to my property. But I said, without your nesting box, could you at least, if you can't lay eggs, I'd like you to lay eggs. That would be great for me. But would you please debug my garden and do as little damage as possible? Now, remember, they've got their own mindset. They could take that information and go, well, we'll see, right? Or, we're kind of big and we're kind of heavy, and when we lumber around, we may knock over a lot of your plants. This is kind of comes with the territory. And so the negotiation began, and the law of reciprocity began. And they'd been here for a couple of days, and I went out this morning to check on them. They're on their way to go back to their owner, and saw some of the things that were knocked over, saw some of the things they cleaned up, saw some areas where they'd picked at some of the food that I'd given them. But in each of the boxes where they had chosen to eat things that I would have eaten, like my zucchini, like my squash, like my moringa plants, and did a little destruction, there was an egg left in every single one of those raised beds. When it should have happened in a nesting box inside of an area where they were going to be traditionally, where they were going to roost. They, in my mind, took my request and that charter and said, for what you have given, we're going to give back. And to me, Shelley, that for those of us that just want to deal with, yes, you can negotiate relationships from the top down and from the bottom up. You can have these conversations with all different types of living beings, breathing beings that we share coexistence with, that we need to be more in reciprocity with. And instead of being angry with the living creatures that are around us, start letting them know what you want and give them the opportunity to step up and be able to be in reciprocity and give it back to you. But that's just a simple and kind of playful and fun example.
Yes, that was a really great, it just happened too. That the reciprocity is like, oh, we damaged the zucchini, here's an egg.
That's bingo. You can still eat it, but it's not so pretty. You may not want to put it out for guests. Here you go. Scramble this with it. You may really like the two of them together, right?
Oh, that's fun. That was really fun.
So let's talk a little bit about taking that up a notch because of time, and we can go into this more in deeper teaching in some of the retreats, but let's take it to people. because we all know that we're dealing with difficult bosses in higher managerial systems with which we may never have a face-to-face conversation. We know we're dealing with partners. We know we're dealing with the traffic on the road and the people that are at the stoplight that want to get ahead of us too quickly. We're dealing with children that don't see the world the way that we do. We're dealing with humanity in a powerful transitional time where people are triggered by fear and instability. So, Shelley, where do you think we can segue best? Right?
That's a really big one.
I know.
Okay. Well, I want to just bring it back to the fact that the reason why we're having these conversations is, one, to let people know they're not the only ones feeling this way, and that there is a way to expand your awareness and your attention, and there are actual tools to help you anchor peace in these very sometimes trying times, and that you're not insane, and that the empathy is something to be embraced, and yet to be
discerned,
discerned or mastered, meaning that it needs to serve you and not take you over.
Oh yeah, that was said beautifully. Not to assume that empathy is boundless and can constantly be charging at you full score, with you not being able to discern whose emotions are these, are they appropriate for me, do I need to do anything with them, not my circus, not my monkeys kind of thing, right?
Exactly. And that by putting up your force field is not being selfish, and because if you take on all these other people's energy that is not yours, and you can't discern what is yours anymore, then you're no longer you're no longer the master of your domain, so to speak. You're just what I call in crisis management.
True. You've lost that self-authority and that sovereignty to manage your energy, and then you can actually be toxic for the next person because of that, can't you, Shelley?
Oh, absolutely. And so I have a great story about a little horse that was new to the equine assisted learning work. And this little horse was in a training. It was one of the very first trainings I ever did. So I'm in this training of 50 people, and we're all in these folding chairs inside of an arena. And there's 2 horses that are at liberty, meaning they're just free to roam around. Whether or not people think that's safe, I didn't, but it doesn't matter. So I'm sitting in the front row, and they had asked for volunteers to come up and be part of the demonstration. So 5 women went up there, and this little horse was going to each person individually, and he would, like nudge on them or tug on them. And there was another horse that was just kind of standing off to the side. And then all these women went off to decide what they were going to do with the horses. And while they were gone, this little horse was wandering around, and he comes right up to me, and he puts his face right up here like this, like just right in front of me, and stares into my eyes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, hi, am I the chosen one? I was feeling pretty special. And all of a sudden I thought I was going to just weep uncontrollably. I just felt like weeping, and I didn't understand why. And I thought, I didn't understand why. So then then they take a break, and people start moving around, and he trots off, and I have this overwhelming sense of sadness and grief, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I share with some people that I had been with, and they're like, oh, you should go talk to the therapist who was leading this training. So I did. And she starts like digging around in my past and, like, tell me about this and that and the other, and what's going on in your life. And I'm like, everybody's got shit going on in their lives. Everybody.
That's right.
And it was like, no, that's not it. I didn't know what it was, but none of those things were it. But I just really felt like crying. So 15 minutes later, break ends. I go and sit down, and all these 5 women come back after their experience, and this little horse is going to each one of them again and like literally like pulling on their clothes until they start talking. And when one would start talking, she started telling the story. And long story short, as he went to each one and literally was pulling on them or pushing them until they would speak up, every single one of those women was going through a divorce. All 5 of them. They didn't know each other before this event. They just happened to come up. They were all holding a tremendous amount of grief and doubt and fear. And this little horse took it all on.
That's right.
So,
and was passing it down the line?
Every single one of them. So as they started crying in their sharing, that feeling that I was holding completely dissipated. Away. It was gone.
So what you would have experienced would have been considered in metaphysical and healing circles as classic transference. You were
exactly
the empathy field that you were sharing on a quantum level with these women and
exactly. Yes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So let's play with that. So yummy. We've got people that go, yeah, I get the empathy. I walk into a room and I'm shell shocked by the amount of information.
There's people that can hardly go outside or go to the mall or, because they're just like, I can't handle it.
Too people-y out there. So let's talk about the boundaries.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the boundaries. What are the boundaries? Number 1, can people be energy vampires? Yes. All the time. It's a real thing. People can vamp you. The people you love can vamp you. Tired moms chasing children around and children that have more energy than they should are already showing the most obvious primal level with which we can be vamped. Those of us that are caregivers. But we can be vamped by a cashier. We can be vamped by our boss that wants our idea and wants the raise and is using a level of manipulation and maybe disingenuous communication with us. And we know we don't feel better after we've left their presence after that 20-minute data download. And we know that they weren't advocating for us. So let's talk about the boundaries.
Oh yeah, we're being vamped by our political system right now. But we won't go there either.
And our financial system.
Yeah.
And in many ways, our educational system. And we know our food is taking more out of our bodies lately through the medical bills and the quality of food going down. So yes, we're here about solutions, and we're here to not ruminate too long in the problem before we look at what solutions are already there.
Right.
Starting with ourselves. Earth anchor work first. Got to be the new earth anchors. So if we're going to understand without blaming, with kindness and that reciprocity around the empathy of understanding, you just don't know how to run your energy, or you're not in a good place to run your energy. It doesn't mean that you have to be that person's sponge. Yeah. It does not mean you need to be their abuse sponge, their emotional sponge, their mental detox sponge. You're not there to take on and become the cesspool of everything that they need to unload. They need to learn how to run their energy, and they need to learn how to release it through the natural outlets that are available, which is really more than anything else, the earth. Trees will take it, and the earth grids.
Nature.
And you see that all the time, don't you? You see the animals doing that naturally, don't you, Shelley?
Oh, sure. If so, doing this work with the horses, they can take on, like that little horse, took on a lot of stuff. And he didn't know what to do with it. He was new to this work. So he came and he dumped it on me. And then he was fine. And he went off. And I didn't know any better. I was wide open. Oh my God, this cute little horse is coming over to me. And he's going to, and I was wide open, just wide open. Now I know better. And I can discern where in that moment, all I knew was it wasn't mine.
Yes.
I knew it wasn't, I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't mine, and I didn't know where it came from. Hadn't been able to pull those pieces together yet.
And obviously that horse felt safe with you, that you had maybe just a deeper level of wisdom, that you would know what to do with that information because of where your discernment is. But none of us
at that time, I was brand new. It was the first time I'd ever been to a training like this. I was brand new. I didn't really know what was going on. But when I've learned, I was like, oh my God, this is so important.
Yeah.
Like this is this is it. This is the piece that people don't know. And in no disrespect, so many healers are not discerning and able to protect themselves in a way that keeps them from being depleted. I worked with a nurse not too long ago, a cancer nurse, and she was, oh my gosh, fried. You know, this is that caregiver burnout, you know, and they have so much compassion for their patients.
Right.
And they want so much for their patients to feel better that they often will try to take their pain away.
Of course. Yes.
And and it's with the loving intention, like they want to take their pain away, but taking on their pain does not diminish the pain of the patient. It only makes you feel pain.
That's so rarely understood and so powerful that you said that, Shelley, because the truth is we believe that there is going to be an exchange. And I'm not saying that exchanges don't take place in the universe, but what I've experienced as an energy intuitive healer when I've got clients on the table, a parent that tries to take away their child's pain, a child trying to take on the burdens of a parent that's flailing with Alzheimer's or dealing with the pains of cancer.
Or a pet will take on your pain.
Exactly. But your pain is still in you. It is just that your field is magnified and now is extended. Right. And the boundaries, the shielding of the individuals or the pets, the empathetic energies around you, intelligent energies around you, now are having a mirrored effect in their own field. Basically, the toxicity grew. I hate to say it that way, but that's what you did. You vomited your unresolved, unhealed, unconscious energies, pains, into the field around you, and those energies that empathize, that did not have sufficient boundaries, took it on. So, gosh, you hit it. You hit it right on the head. How do we help our folks? And I'm going to tell you right now, in my practice and in my personal practice, both professional and personal, I employ Donna Eden's technique of clearing, breathing, tapping up on various energy points, acupressure points, meridians, key meridians, and flow points every single day to clear and then reground and shield. Shielding is very important, folks. Getting up every day with an attitude of gratitude and making the statement in whatever language is of your own true faith and connection. I dedicate this day to staying in the highest degree of light and love. May 100% pure light always surround, protect, fortify me. I'm just throwing words out, but we need to make the declaration for the boundary
and feel that
there.
Not just say it, but feel it.
Yeah.
Like you literally want every cell in your body to radiate out that intention.
Yes.
And the same thing with the horse work is helping people recognize their emotional intelligence. So the energy of empathy that creates emotions in our body, those are messages for us. And we can discern those messages. Is that somebody else's or is that mine?
Yes.
And if that's somebody else's, is that something, like you said, is there anything I need to do with this information right now? Or should I just leave it out here for them? Because it's
so let's extend that one more cast upward. We just went to people and intimate relationships. Now let's look at some of the issues that are going on social media and politics. Okay. I may be a libertarian, okay? I actually am unaffiliated, but let's just assume I'm a libertarian. And I'm so frustrated that my candidate never really gets past, the primaries. We all know that if you are not dealing with the reds and the blues, and then you go, all right, who am I going to break down to between the blues and the reds? And then you start listening to both sides and you start realizing I could get really angry, really angsty, really, really exasperated with what is going on the teams and the sides. And now all of a sudden it's social justice issues. And now all of a sudden it has to do with gender related social justice issues. Now you have to ask yourself, you can have empathy, but do I have sufficient boundaries, or did I just let a bunch of perceptions, and that's all they are, perceptions that are individual, that have become a bundle of mass perceptions that now are in opposition to themselves? Is that really mine? Is it going to serve me? Is it going to bring me into a vibration of continuity and love and reciprocity and peace and projecting that peace out to everybody else? Or did I just let myself get hijacked by a herd conscious thought without any critical thinking skills, without any critical, empathetic, emotive skills? Right? Right, Shelley?
Yeah. Yeah.
And who did I serve if I just became just like the disease in my body that went to my dog or went to my sibling? If now I am being plagued with the disease of societal conflict. Mm-hmm. Now there's more pain, and now it's in my body instead of just in these pockets of unresolved misunderstanding with other high sentience that hasn't learned how to find the reciprocity, the negotiations, and healthy boundaries. Because microcosm is macrocosm, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that macrocosm, so all comes back down to here.
Yeah.
You can only manage this to the best of your ability. And when you do, then those around you, all that chaos around you becomes more manageable.
It resets your quantum field that you're not interested in conflict. And, in the movie The Secret, they talk about the fact that, and I can't remember which presenter said it, but they said with regards to relationships, if you're moving up in vibration and you're moving up in understanding how the universe works and your partner, for instance, isn't, the more that you hold a higher frequency vibration, they said when they zig, you're going to zag. You won't be in the same room at the same time when their vibration's particularly low. You're not going to find yourself in conflict with them at a time where they're looking for someone else to resonate with them because they just walked away from Fox News or CNN or whatever it was, and they're ready to get really gritty with somebody. You're going to have just left for a luncheon with a bunch of lovely ladies that are part of your net, you're building your professional network. You won't be in sync because the universe conspires. The quantum field resets itself to hold the vibration of your choosing. So gosh, we could go on forever. We're already past recording time.
Right.
There are ways to set brainwave frequency to do this. There's ways to be in a higher hertz to be able to keep ourselves in peace. There are practices with aromatherapy, with flowers, with going out in nature. All this is going to be covered more in some of our retreats and upcoming dialogue. Yes. But we kind of need to wrap it up. Empathy, let's just talk really quick, say empathy and boundaries are what? Empathy is you being part of a one consciousness, beautifully fractalized amongst all living sentient life on this sphere and beyond. And I'm going to go to you, Shelley. What are the boundaries? What are the boundaries that are going to make us feel?
Well, boundaries are how you express your empathy in a powerful way. Mm-hmm. You get to utilize your empathy in a powerful way that also serves you in your highest good as well as those around you. Whereas if you're running empathy without boundaries, then you're becoming depleted and you're actually not serving those around you.
I'm going to add one thing to that. That was beautiful. I think also depleted and jaded. There was a great quote by Brene Brown. A lot of people know her. She talks about vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And she made the statement that the most honest people are the ones that tell you what their boundaries are up front.
Yes.
And they're generally the happiest, even though they may not always be perceived that way to you, because they care less about pleasing you at their own expense than you might be comfortable with. But the people that don't set those boundaries and then end up resenting that you take too much very often unconsciously because you didn't know what the boundaries were, end up becoming passive aggressive, resentful, and jaded, as well as depleted. Everybody loses in that equation. And when she said that, the lights and the rockets and the whole fireworks went off in my head. I'm not serving anybody by going an extra mile to the point I can't even crawl home again.
Right.
So empathy.
That's very good. Okay, I know we have to wrap this up.
We do.
Thank you all for being with us. I am loving these conversations. We do this all the time, and we're like, well, we just need to start recording these.
That's right.
And bring other people in on the conversation. So send us your thoughts and your ahas and questions and things like that. And
get in on the chats. Let us know what you want to talk about next. Let us know how you felt about this recording. Go and subscribe to Waking Up Solutionary TV. Please get the notifications bell. Consider even supporting the channel because we're all doing this from the goodness of our own heart, and we know that this is how it works. If you've got, $2, $5 to drop, we're not here to solicit you. We're just letting you know. It doesn't matter what kind of content creator you are out there. If you're independent and you're not sponsored, you're doing this because you believe that it's your charter to be bringing the world into a better place of joy and synchronicity. And that's what Shelley and I are about. And Shelley, they know about our websites. It's going to be linked. Is there anything else you think we need to add before we tell them about what's coming up next week?
No, let's go ahead and, because we're already running over time. So let's go ahead and just tell them about next week.
Do no harm. The next topic is do no harm. Now that we know that there is a false sense of self, now that we know that we do have empathy, we are feeling things and we need to set boundaries, how do we move with grace on this earth plane and do no harm? So coming back to you soon. Thank you, Shelley. You're a blast to talk to. Thank you, everyone else. Thank you, Earth Anchors. It is a privilege and an honor. Remember, we are the solution.
That's right.